Good morning, everyone. As we have started the cardiovascular system, I'll be talking about the properties of cardiac muscle today. So, heart is a very special organ of body as cessation of its activity or cardiac arrest for more than few minutes is detrimental to life. The distinctiveness of heart to pump blood tirelessly throughout the life is due to many special properties inherent to its muscle. So these special properties of cardiac muscle should be studied in more detail to understand the cardiovascular function and dysfunctions. So these properties can be categorized into four groups: morphological, electrical, mechanical, and metabolic. So morphological properties are nothing but the anatomical structure of the heart, so which has been already covered to you in anatomy. So we will see the electrical, mechanical, and few metabolic properties. This is a picture of the cardiac muscle showing the striated type, and the muscles are branched variously. So at the junction of the branch there are specialized areas called intercalated disc, and the intercalated disc there are numerous gap junctions present. So because of the presence of gap junctions there is depolarization wave can easily pass through. That is, the electrical activity of the heart is very much active because of presence of numerous gap junctions, and the mitochondria are also present very richly because they allow for the rapid oxidation of substrates to produce the ATP, and the cardiac muscle acts as a functional syncytium. So it is not a structural syncytium which you have noticed or which you have studied in present in the body wall of earthworm. So here it is a functional syncytium because though the cells, muscle cells are branched, they are acting as a single unit. A syncytium is a tissue containing cells with no boundaries. So the nuclei are free in the cytoplasm. So in the heart there are two syncytium, that is atrial syncytium and ventricular syncytium, because the atria are separate from the ventricles by a fibrous band of tissue known as atrioventricular ring. So these are few morphological points of the cardiac muscle. And coming to the electrical properties, so these are the electrophysiological properties: excitability or bathmotrophism, contractility or inotrophism, rhythmicity or chronotrophism, conductivity or dromotrophism, distensibility or tonus. So along with these words you have to know these words also: bathmotrophism, inotrophism, chronotrophism, dromotrophism, and tonus is nothing but the distensibility, that is ability of the cardiac muscle to stretch. So in the electrical properties, the first one is excitability. So it is defined as ability of a tissue to respond to a stimulus. In case of a muscle, the response is shortening of its fibers. So in heart, two types of tissues are present: conducting tissue and contractile tissue. So conducting tissue functions predominantly to initiate and conduct impulses from one end to the other end of heart, and contractile tissue functions predominantly to contract. So both these tissues show excitation. The resting membrane potential of a mammalian cardiac muscle cell is about minus 90 millivolts, interior negative to exterior, and average it is 85 to 95. Stimulation: when the muscle is stimulated, it will produce a propagated action potential that is responsible for initiating contraction. Depolarization proceeds rapidly and an overshoot is present as skeletal muscle and nerve, but this is followed by a plateau phase before the resting membrane potential returns to the baseline. In mammalian hearts, depolarization lasts about 2 milliseconds, but the plateau and repolarization phase lasts for 200 milliseconds or more. So now we will see the very important topic of today's class, cardiac action potential. So when a cardiac muscle fiber is stimulated, it will be producing an action potential similar to the skeletal muscle action potential, but in the cardiac muscle it will be very long. So if you remember the skeletal muscle action potential, it will be simply like this, a spike potential we call it as. But here in cardiac muscle action potential, it is very long. So we can divide the action potential graph into 5 phases. So the first one is initial rapid depolarization, that is sudden overshoot of the voltage occurs. So what is the resting membrane potential? It is minus 85 to minus 95. So roughly you can take minus 90 from here. It will be rising to plus 20 to plus 30 millivolts. Okay, so this is depolarization, and then immediately after that there is rapid repolarization, and then plateau phase, and then repolarization, and again resting potential phase. So we have to know the ionic basis of each and every phase. So first, depolarization phase. So similar to the skeletal muscle action potential, the ionic basis here also sodium entry. So along with the sodium entry here at minus 30 to minus 40 millivolts, some calcium also enters. So for depolarization, both sodium and calcium contribute in the cardiac muscle action potential. So from the peak, that is plus 30 millivolts, again there will be repolarization. So this repolarization lasts for 2 milliseconds in mammalian heart. So the rapid repolarization is because of, as you know, there is transient potassium exit. Okay, so the sodium channels will close here in the repolarization phase, and the potassium ions or potassium channels will be opening, resulting in transient outward, that is the potassium ions will be going out. So that's why it is called potassium exit. And then the next phase is plateau phase. So here it will be the cardiac muscle will be remaining in depolarized state. Okay, so how much ever you stimulate here in the plateau phase, it will not be again stimulated. So that is one important reason here. So in the plateau phase, the cardiac muscle will be in depolarized states. So the membrane potential falls very slowly only to the minus 40 millivolts. Okay, so here from minus 50, here around here. So slowly the potential will be falling. So it will last for 100 to 200 milliseconds. So this is 5 to 15 times longer contraction time of the cardiac muscle as compared to the skeletal muscle. So this long plateau phase is the reason for the long contraction time of the cardiac muscle. So what is the ionic basis here? Again, calcium entry, slow influx of calcium entry from the opening of L-type calcium channels, and potassium exit, that is transient potassium exit, continues here. So main reason for plateau phase of the action potential is slow calcium entry, and after that the repolarization starts. So here from the, that is around minus 40 millivolts to, it will come to down to minus 85, minus 90, that is resting potential value. So this phase lasts for 50 milliseconds. Plateau phase for 100 to 200 milliseconds. Depolarization only 2 milliseconds. Repolarization 150 milliseconds. Okay, so what is the ionic basis here? Again, the potassium exit. So here the delayed outward rectifying potassium channels, which are voltage gated and activated slowly. Okay, so along with the potassium exit, the calcium channels also close. Okay, so here there is slow entry of calcium, and in the repolarization phase, the calcium ions will close and the potassium channels will be open. So what type of potassium channels? Delayed outward rectifying potassium channels, through which potassium exits from the cell. Okay, so after that the resting membrane potential will be reached, that is minus 90 millivolts. So it is maintained by a resting potassium current, and the channels which contribute to here is inward rectifying potassium channels. Okay, so these potassium channels names you have to remember. So what are the different phases of the cardiac action potential and the ionic basis of each phase. So okay, so when the question comes as cardiac action potential, you have to draw this diagram and explain under these headings with the ionic basis. Okay, I hope you all understood this. And the next one is autorhythmicity. The ability to initiate a heartbeat continuously and regularly without external stimulation is called autorhythmicity. Because of presence of specialized pacemaker tissue, which includes SA node and AV node, atrioventricular bundle and Purkinje fibers in the heart, which can initiate the action potential. We will see about the sinoatrial node. It is located in the superior posterolateral wall of the right atrium, immediately below and lateral to the opening of superior vena cava. So the SA nodal fibers connect directly with the atrial muscle fibers so that any action potential begins in the sinus node spreads immediately into the atrial muscle wall. The mechanism of sinus nodal rhythmicity is that resting membrane potential is minus 55 millimoles. At this potential, the fast sodium ion channel closes, but slow sodium and calcium channels remain open and thereby causing the action potential. And the self-excitation of the sinus nodal fibers is that the inherent leakiness of these fibers to sodium and calcium ions causes their self-excitation. So this inherent leakiness is called funny channels. So in the sinus nodal fibers, so these fibers are also called slow fibers. The SA and AV nodal fibers are called slow fibers. So they have this inherent property of funny channels or funny currents, which are nothing but the leaky sodium channels. So because of this reason only, the SA nodal fibers are able to generate its own impulse. Okay. And the automatic electrical rhythmicity of sinus fibers. So because of self-excitation, sinus fibers has automatic rhythmical discharge and contraction properties. So this is a picture of the pacemaker potential. We call it as pre-potential or sinoatrial node action potential. Okay. So the sinoatrial node fibers or sinus fibers have that inherent property of leakiness, as I have already told you. So the resting membrane potential is around minus 55 millivolts. So from the resting membrane potential, there is slow depolarization. So this depolarization starts because of that inherent leakiness of the membrane to the sodium channels. So slow diffusion of sodium into the sinus fibers slowly raises the potential from the minus 55 millivolts. Okay, so this forms the initial part of the pacemaker potential. So then later part, the transient T calcium channels open up. So here you can see I calcium T, and there is slow influx of calcium causing further depolarization in the slower rate till the threshold level reaches minus 40. Okay, so the initial part of the depolarization is because of sodium entry, and the later part of the pacemaker potential is because of transient calcium channels, which will cause calcium entry till minus 40, that is threshold level is reached. Okay, so then at the threshold level, another type of calcium channels, that is I calcium L, long lasting calcium channels will open up, and the action potential starts with rapid depolarization. So the calcium influx occurs, that is causing rapid depolarization. So it is unlike the cardiac or skeletal action potential where the depolarization is because of sodium influx. But here in pacemaker potential, the depolarization is because of calcium influx. So remember this point. So at the end of depolarization, potassium channels open up and the calcium channels close. So that is repolarization. Okay, in repolarization, there will be potassium channel opening up, causing the potassium to diffuse out of fibers, resulting in repolarization. That is the voltage will fall to minus 55 to minus 60. Okay, so the reason for depolarization is long lasting calcium channels, and reason for repolarization is closure of calcium and opening of potassium channels. Okay, so IK is potassium current, IH is funny current. Okay, so the starting of the pacemaker potential is because of the funny currents and potassium decay. This is IK, and IH increases. So this will increase, the potassium decay will decrease. And the later part of pacemaker potential is because of transient calcium channels, which causes calcium influx. And the depolarization phase is because of I calcium L, that is long lasting calcium channel causing calcium influx, and the repolarization is because of potassium influx and also calcium channels closure. Okay, I hope you understood. So this is one more picture, the same pacemaker. This is the minus 55 to minus 40 millivolts. This is pre-potential or pacemaker potential. And from here again depolarization and repolarization. Okay, so this picture, ventricular muscle fiber, is the cardiac action potential, which we have seen previously. And the role of autonomic nervous system in controlling the heart rhythm, that is how the autonomic nervous system affects the sinoatrial node. So the sinoatrial node is richly innervated by parasympathetic fibers from the right vagus. The normal activity of vagus liberates acetylcholine from its nerve endings, which increases the permeability of SA nodal fibers for potassium, producing hyperpolarization due to efflux of potassium. So this hyperpolarization slows the firing rate of SA node from its automatic rate of 90 to 120 impulses to the actual heart rate of 72 beats per minute. Okay, so now you understood the why the heart rate is 72 beats per minute, because of this vagal tone. So there is always the vagal activity controlling the heart rhythm. So that normal vagal activity is called vagal tone, which is the reason for the normal heart rate of 72 beats per minute. Okay, so how it affects the parasympathetic and sympathetic. So the effect of parasympathetic stimulation is that it will decrease the heart rate, and along with that the rate of transmission of impulses to ventricles, that is conductivity, also decreases. Strong parasympathetic stimulation may even block the transmission, and ventricles may stop beating for 4 to 10 seconds. And if this happens, the Purkinje system initiates the rhythm, causing ventricular contraction at a rate of 15 to 40. So if the SA node stops beating because of strong parasympathetic stimulation, the ventricular Purkinje system will take over. So that is called vagal escape phenomenon. And then effect of sympathetic stimulation. So it will cause increased heart rate. And what happens when the sympathetic nerves are stimulated? They release norepinephrine, which will increase the permeability of cardiac muscle fibers to calcium, which increase the sinus rate and the conduction of impulse, that is conductivity and excitability, all will increase to the sympathetic stimulation. So in this picture you can see the first one is parasympathetic stimulation, which will slow down the heart rate, and the second one is sympathetic stimulation, which will increase the heart rate. So this pacemaker along with the effect of sympathetic and parasympathetic is also very important short question for you. So coming to the mechanical properties of the cardiac muscle, which are contractility, Euler-Nunn law, refractory period, staircase phenomenon, summation of subliminal stimulus, and then effect of preload, that is length tension relationship, and effect of afterload, that is force velocity relationship. So all these we will see one by one. So the contractility is nothing but ability to respond to a stimulus generated within the heart or to an external stimulus. So in the picture, so the first one is skeletal muscle, action potential and the mechanical response. The lower one is cardiac muscle action potential and mechanical response. So the mechanical response in cardiac muscle fiber begins just after the start of depolarization. Okay, so here after the start of depolarization, the mechanical response starts and lasts for about 1.5 times as long as the action potential. Thus, the mechanical response, which is 300 milliseconds, overlaps the electrical response, which is 200 milliseconds for the whole period. Okay, so the mechanical response overlaps the action, that is electrical response, over the whole period. So electrical is only 200 till here. If you see the mechanical, it is extending till 300. So this is in contrast to skeletal muscle, where the mechanical response begins a few milliseconds after the end of repolarization. So here depolarization and repolarization completed, action potential completed. And after the completion of repolarization, the mechanical response of skeletal muscle starts and lasts for 30 to 50 milliseconds in mammalian skeletal muscle and 100 milliseconds in amphibian skeletal muscle. So that is the reason or the main difference between the skeletal muscle and cardiac muscle. When you give subsequent or immediate or repeated stimulation, the skeletal muscle will be responding with increasing the amplitude, whereas the cardiac muscle will not respond because of this long action potential, that is long plateau phase. Okay, so we will discuss this again in the next coming properties. And the next property is all or none law. So the response of cardiac muscle to a stimulus is all or none character. Okay, all means present, none means absent. That is, when a stimulus is applied, either the heart does not contract at all, none response, or contracts to its maximum ability, that is all response. This is because of syncytial arrangement of cardiac muscle fibers. So therefore, all or none law in heart is applicable to whole of functional syncytial unit, that is entire atria or entire ventricle. Whereas in skeletal muscle, it is applicable only to a single muscle fiber. Okay, so in heart, it is applicable to the whole syncytial unit, either atrial syncytium or ventricular syncytium. So when you give a stimulus, either it may respond to full or there is no response at all. So how much ever you increase the strength of the stimulus. Okay, so it does not depend on the strength or intensity of the stimulus. So the next property is refractory period. So this is very important short question. So the refractory period is period after the action potential during which the cardiac muscle does not respond to a second stimulus. Okay, so the cardiac muscle has a long refractory period. We can divide the period into two, absolute and relative. Absolute starts from the 0 to 2/3 of the third phase and relative from the 1/3 to last of the cardiac action potential. Okay, so this is the mechanical response and this is the electrical response. And the absolute refractory period defined as the period during which how much ever the strength of stimulus if you apply, the cardiac muscle does not respond at all. Okay, so that's why it is called absolute refractory period. And the relative refractory period is a period during which if you give a strong strength of stimulus, there is the response of the cardiac muscle is seen. Okay, so the relative refractory period, the response will be seen. Absolute, no response is seen at all. And the duration of this absolute is 180 to 200 milliseconds and the duration of relative refractory period is 50 milliseconds. And the significance of this long refractory period in cardiac muscle is that the cardiac muscle is refractory to any stimulus during the contraction phase, that is systole. So this phase or this long refractory period helps in the complete relaxation of the heart. Okay, so immediately after the contraction, the complete summation of the contractions and tetanus cannot be produced in the cardiac muscle. Since the heart has to function as a pump, it must relax, get filled with the blood, and then again contract to pump out the blood. So if it is going on contracting during the filling phase, what happens? It is not able to function as a pump. It has to fill during the relaxation period and then again contract so that the blood is pumped out completely out of the heart, and then again it has to relax and then again so this cycle has to be continued in a sequential way. So that's why this long refractory period is very much helpful in the heart functioning normally. So the next property is Treppe or staircase phenomenon. So it is seen in a quiescent heart, that is following application of second Stenius ligature. So that is Stenius ligature are the amphibian experiment for you. So we will explain you in the frog's heart experiment. Okay. So Stenius ligature is nothing but the application of ligatures to the frog's heart. Okay. So in quiescent heart means silent heart is stimulated repeatedly, keeping the interval between the stimuli just less than 10 seconds. The magnitude of first 3 to 4 contractions progressively increase. Okay. So the magnitude of first 3 to 4 contraction increase progressively. So here we have not shown anything because it is stopped, quiescent heart, and after that if you stimulate repeatedly, the first 3 to 4 contractions will increase in amplitude. So it is appearing that it is violating all or none law, but it is not so because the stimulus alters the condition for next stimulus. Okay, so the reason for this staircase or Treppe is that there are 3 reasons. First one is increase the quantity of calcium available to the contractile machinery in the next stimulus. So this is beneficial effect which we have already covered in the skeletal muscle properties. So same beneficial effect is also applicable here. And also one more reason is that during the first contraction, temperature in the myocardial cell increases, which enhances the enzyme activity for the muscle contraction. And also the first contraction decreases the viscosity of sarcoplasm due to increased temperature. Thus, resistance provided by sarcoplasm for second and subsequent contraction is significantly lower than the first one. So all these are the reasons for staircase phenomenon, that is increase in the amplitude of subsequent contractions. So that is only till 3 to 4, initial 3 to 4 contraction. Again the amplitude will not be increasing. So that is Treppe or staircase phenomenon. The next property is summation of subminimal stimulus. So when a subthreshold stimulus is applied to a quiescent heart, there occurs no response. When subthreshold stimuli are applied repeatedly at an interval of half to 1 second, there occurs a contraction of the heart after about 10 to 20 stimuli. If you give the repeated stimuli with half to 1 second gap for 10 to 20 stimuli, there occurs a contraction here. Okay, so this phenomenon is called temporal summation of subminimal stimuli. Okay, so this is also again in a quiescent heart. The force of contraction of cardiac muscle depends on its preloading and afterloading. So what are the effects of preload? So first of all, preload means a load which starts acting on a muscle before it starts to contract, and afterload refers to the load which acts on the muscle after the beginning of muscle contraction. States that within the physiological limits, the force of contraction is proportional to its initial length. So here in the heart, the initial length is nothing but end diastolic volume. Okay. So first one, the effect of preload. So it is understood by the length tension relationship of a cardiac muscle. It is almost similar to that of the skeletal muscle. So the active force developed is maximum within the optimal length. So this is the optimal length, and the active tension developed is maximum in the optimal length. So the interaction of thick and thin filaments are maximum within this optimal length. So the increase in length of sarcomere increases the sensitivity of myofilaments to calcium. So the stretch of myocardium increases the affinity of troponin C to calcium. So when the sarcomeres are stretched beyond the optimal length, the force developed decreases due to decrease in the overlap and the interaction between thick and thin filaments. So this decreases cross bridge formation. Okay, so optimal length, maximum cross bridge formation, and the tension developed is also maximum. So if you see in this curve, so the total force, the total tension developed increases with the length. So as the length increases, total tension developed increases. And the passive tension or the resting force is only 15% of the total force. And it is referred to as preload because it exists before contraction. The resting force or preload curve represents the diastolic phase of the cardiac cycle, and active force curve represents the systolic phase. Okay, so the passive tension curve represents the diastolic phase, and the active tension phase curve represents the systolic phase of the cardiac cycle. The resting force increases steeply immediately after the optimal length, okay, which is physiologically protective to the heart as it prevents over distension occurring due to overfilling of ventricle. Okay, so this length tension relationship, you have to know first the Frank-Starling law, which states that within the physiological limits, the force of contraction is proportional to the initial length or end diastolic volume of the heart. So this is the graphical representation which shows the active set tension, which is representing the systole phase of the heart, and the passive tension or resting force which represents the diastolic phase of the heart, and it increases steeply immediately after the optimal length, which is protective for the heart, preventing in over distension due to overfilling of ventricle. And this is the total tension curve, which is almost linear with the increasing length of the muscle. Okay, I hope you understood this length tension relationship, which depends on the Starling's law. So in this force velocity relationship, the graph is like this, so which implies that force and shortening velocity are inversely related. This shortening is faster with lower loads and slower with higher loads. And also Vmax. So what is this? This velocity, shortening velocity is maximum at the zero load, or initial length is 0. Okay, load is 0. And as the load is increasing on the muscle, at one point the shortening velocity will be becoming 0. That is called PO. And if you change the initial length of muscle by increasing the load, what happens? The velocity will not change. The Vmax will be same, but the force of contraction will increase. And also if you give the catecholamines or calcium concentration is increased, both the Vmax and the load is also increased and the Vmax is also increased. So these are the three curves. This one is the normal, and this is the effect of change in initial length and effect of catecholamines and calcium concentration. So shortening velocity and force of contraction both are different. So when you increase the initial length, the Vmax shortening velocity is same, but only the force of contraction is increasing. Okay, so remember this point in the force velocity relationship. Okay. So we have seen till now different properties of the cardiac muscle, electrical and mechanical. So if we compare with the skeletal muscle, now we can know the differences and we can remember more. So the cardiac muscle, myocardium as a whole obeys all or none law, that is, it acts as a functional syncytium and that will obey the all or none law. Okay, that is contracts maximally with threshold stimulus, or there is no response at all. The single muscle fiber, here in the skeletal muscle, only one muscle fiber obeys all or none law because the whole muscle shows quantal summation. Okay, so if you can remember what is the quantal summation, so we have told you in the practical classes. So go through them once and revise what is quantal summation. The active state and duration of the contraction are longer in cardiac muscle, and in skeletal muscle they are very short. And the refractory period is longer. Summation and tetanus are not at all possible, but summation of subminimal stimuli is present in cardiac muscle. And in skeletal muscle, refractory period is shorter and summation and tetanus are possible. Rate of force development during the contraction is slower and rate of force development during contraction is faster. And the velocity of shortening is slower, and here also velocity of shortening is slower. Marked ability to alter contractility, here little ability to alter contractility. Maximum tension developed per unit of cross section of the muscle in only 1/3 to half of that of skeletal muscle, whereas in skeletal muscle maximum tension developed per unit cross section of muscle is very much greater. Okay, so the first point is very important. The myocardium as whole obeys all or none law, whereas skeletal muscle, single muscle fiber obey the all or none law. Okay, in the refractory period, here it is longer, here it is shorter. Tetanus not possible, tetanus possible. Okay, now coming to the metabolic properties of cardiac muscle. Blood flow in myocardium is very high, that is 80 ml per 100 gram per minute, whereas in skeletal muscle it is only 3 ml per 100 gram per minute. And there are numerous mitochondria in the cardiac muscle fibers which will supply the ATP. And there is high content of myoglobin, which is O2 storing muscle pigment. The heart works under anaerobic condition with essentially no accumulation of lactic acid. Under basal or resting condition of the total cardiac need of heart, 60% is provided by fat, 35% by carbs, 5% by ketones and amino acids. Okay, so this point you remember. Blood flow is very high, 80 ml per 100 gram per minute. Okay. To summarize the topic, we have seen the four categories of properties of cardiac muscle, that is morphological, electrical, and then mechanical and metabolic properties. So morphological, you already know the structure, and that is the main physiological point is cardiac muscle acts as a functional syncytium. And then in the electrical properties, we have seen the cardiac action potential and pacemaker potential. So both are very important short questions. You have to know the diagrams very well, and then the ionic basis of each